going to go for it. I mean,
And
I
All
put
right,
lipstick
Jim, you're
on.
in.
See, you look good.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, 2014 Piedmont Laureate winner,
Thank you.
Carrie Knowles. And you have many other prestigious awards for your short stories and many other things. You've been a freelance writer for over 40 years.
Yes.
You're
Eventually, I have
45,
to change
which is...
that to, I say 45, but eventually, I've been saying that for years. And
No,
eventually,
we're
I have
just
to
gonna
change
keep it like
50.
that.
Right. We're going to change 45. Right.
You were awarded the NC Arts Council Creative
Creative nonfiction.
Yes,
Yeah.
grant to work on your memoir, which I think is so impressive. Alzheimer hit so many people,
Right.
and you wrote a memoir on that, which is amazing.
And it's going to be
too.
reissued.
That is
Yeah,
fantastic.
soon. Yeah.
I would love to talk to you about that after
Yes.
too. You're here to discuss your new great book. You made me hungry for hours reading this.
Oh, good.
A
Good.
Garden Wall in Provence. So
Great.
thank you.
You're welcome.
And there's recipes in there, and you explain a lot of the different recipes and like why the king cake is there and where it all came from. So thank you. Tell us a little bit about your book and why you were inspired to write it.
Why I was inspired to write it, yes. Because several years ago, many years ago, we lived in Avignon, France.
Come on.
I've had the privilege of living in 4 different countries, actually. I've lived in Ireland, I've lived in the United States, of course, I've lived in Avignon, and then I've lived in Australia. So I've had an opportunity to, and it's different to live in a place than it is to visit as a tourist. And when we were living in Avignon, we had all 3 kids with us, and our youngest child was an infant. And we were there, my husband was on sabbatical from NC State, and we were there, and I had a contract to write a series of articles for a magazine about French food. So I had an infant and 2 other children, a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old, who went to the public schools. And we lived in, you know, when you travel as a tourist, you don't necessarily notice how the houses are.
Yeah.
But in southern France and throughout most of southern France and throughout much of Europe, the houses come right up to the sidewalk, so there's no front yard.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're very narrow, and the reason that they're narrow is in many of the countries in Europe, including Belgium and you know, a lot of in France and whatever, the taxes are based on how many windows are in the front.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody wants to eliminate the number of windows in the front so that they can have less taxes. So usually there's a door and 1 little window in the front, and then 2. So everybody lives in these narrow houses, which are very tall, and many of these row houses have. So in the front, you would have, you would go in and you'd have a little vestibule and then stairs going upstairs, and then you'd have a living room area, and often sort of a slightly covered area in the back so people could eat outside.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would have like a long, very narrow backyard. And the interesting thing about that is the windows for the bedrooms, of course, because you want to eliminate the taxes, are in the back. The big windows are in the back, and you would just have 1 window at the top. And so everybody, and the windows were double windows like this, and so they would open them, and then they could look out into your garden and see everything that you did. Well, because we were an American family with 3 children, everybody knew, and we lived in the arrondissement Sunroof, and which was outside the ramparts, the old city of Avignon. Everybody knew who we were. Everybody knew what we were doing. They knew everything about us. And we were surrounded by old ladies. And so that's where the old ladies come from. And also, it was fun for me, since I was writing a series of articles for a magazine. I think I wrote 6 articles while we were there for the year. It was, I was there to sort of observe and write and pay attention to how people eat, shop, live, and I learned a lot of things. But so I had this infant that I would carry in a backpack, which was very American. It was a front pack, and he was born September 29th, and we left for Avignon December 1st. So he was, except for he was not the normal size. He was almost 11 pounds when he was born. And so, people would say, "Oh, how old? Oh, he's very big." And I would say, "Yes, he is." But he would be like this little thing. But, so, you have one window in the front, and so when my husband would go out in the morning to do whatever, the old ladies would open the window in the front and say, tell your wife not to do this, or tell your wife not to do that, or, whatever. Or, because at
That
the
was
end.
fun for you.
It was fun.
Jeez.
So, yeah, and they knew everything about us. I'll tell one story that's actually in the back of the book. So in the morning, French bakers bake twice a day. You don't bake once a day because a baguette is only good for a couple hours as far as they're concerned. Anything more than a 4-hour-old baguette is throw it away, feed it to the birds, don't eat it. So you would go back. So the little school, we lived on Impas de l'Alliance, which is the dead end of the Alliance. And we would go down there, and then I would take a left-hand turn and drop the 2 older kids off at school. And then, like all the other women, I would do my little shopping because I had a typical French kitchen, which was really, this was about the size of the floor of my kitchen. And I had a little sink, and to the left of the sink, under the counter, I had an under-the-counter refrigerator, which was about the size of a dormitory fridge, basically. Then I had 2 or 3 burners, I think 3 burners. No oven, because very few people in southern France or in Europe to have an oven is like, ooh la la. I mean, you've got an oven.
Still, too. I watch HGTV International. And
Right.
Like, yeah.
Right, have an oven. And I'll tell you, you don't need an oven. And then I had this rotisserie that sat on the countertop that was glass, all glass, and with all these instructions and all this, and I thought, no way am I ever turning that on, because that could explode.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I don't know what the things are. It looks like it gets too hot. I don't think so. Plus, I didn't want to clean it. And that was my kitchen. That's all I had. So every morning you would go out and you would buy whatever you needed for the day. So I'll tell you 2 stories. The first one is, there's a sense of loyalty in France that is in the sense of loyalty in Belgium and France and all throughout Europe, and you follow those rules or you can get yourself into trouble. And loyalty extends to your greengrocer, your butcher, and your baker, and every day, so all the bakers in the area arrange their schedules so one is closed and the others are open. So there's always 1 day a week or 2 days a week in which you have to shop with somebody else, and that's understood. But if you shop with somebody else on those days when your guy is open, you might not get such good service. That's right. And the other thing is, and you have to imagine, I was there with this little kitchen writing about French food, not about restaurants, but about how do the French live and how do they cook. And I have 2 burners and this little thing and no oven. And I walk around and I see everybody has a basket or a bag that they shop with. And they all have a beautiful parsley coming out of the bag. And I'm thinking, use a lot of parsley here, which is great. I like parsley, so I'm going to write about this. I go to all the greengrocers. Now there's 3, there's the madame, who's at the end of our block, and then there's 2 others on the way to school. I'm an American shopper, and I have 3 kids on a limited budget, and it was during, anyway, the exchange was horrible. And so I was shopping for bargains, This one had the best clementines at the best price. This one had this, big mistake. No parsley. I would look, and there was no parsley. I couldn't find the damn parsley, no matter how hard I looked for the parsley. So one day, I am shopping, and there's, the weather wasn't that great, and I'm down at the greengrocer down this way. And after I dropped my 2 children off at school, I go to the greengrocer, and another woman who I see all the time, I didn't know who she was. She's ahead of me in line. And, I'd seen her in that shop before. She gets to the, checkout part, and the greengrocer says, and we're talking little green, grocery stands. We're not talking stores. Nobody goes to the stores unless you need toilet paper, that's what that's for. And so she goes and she buys her things, and the guy behind the cash register says, he reaches under the counter, pulls out a big thing of beautiful parsley and says, un petit cadeau pour vous, a little gift for you. So you only get the parsley if you're a loyal customer. And if they see, and so you put the parsley and then the parsley is tucked in the top of the bag to indicate to everybody else as you walk down the street that you're a loyal customer someplace else.
Oh.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
I
so
love that.
I know.
Did you
So
ever
I
get
didn't.
any?
No. So then I had to make a decision. Who was I gonna go with?
Mhm.
So I decided to go with the madam who was at the end of the street.
Mhm.
And it took me about 3 weeks of religiously shopping with her. And and I made the mistake. I would get the clementines here, and I'd have my bag with clementines in it, then I'd get my potatoes someplace else. And so everybody all the way down the street knew that I was hunting and gathering. I was not being loyal. So everybody knew that I was
That's
not a
very
loyal
interesting.
customer. Isn't it?
So do you still shop like that a little bit now? Or do you miss that way of shopping?
I
or-
do. I really
Yeah.
do. And it's kind of fun. I mean, it really is. But it's a whole different kind of lifestyle. We live close to the farmers market, the state farmers
is so
market. So I
oh,
try to
yeah.
go there, and I try to be loyal to. But it is interesting. But within 3 weeks of always shopping with her,
Uh-huh.
in which she felt assured that I was not cheating in some way, I got my parsley.
That is
Wow.
funny.
And I could stick my parsley in the top.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
could walk,
Proud.
right. So that's one story. The other one is the whole bread thing, which is in the book,
Oh, yeah.
And the bread thing is real. I mean, the bread thing
Yeah,
is
it sounds
real.
it, yeah.
It is really real. The other great story is, so you also have a butcher. Well, Monsieur Dudy.
I
who
wish we had a
actually-
butcher. too.
Yeah. He was, and I didn't ever use that rotisserie because I didn't need to, and because I figured out very quickly that you drop your kid off at school, you get your green stuff, and then you go to the butcher that you choose, which was Monsieur Dudy for me. And you would go in, and it's completely different than here. I mean, imagine if you went to the Harris Teeter, for instance, and you picked out a pork roast, and the guy behind the counter said to you, and who is coming for dinner tonight? You're buying a big pork roast. Who's coming to dinner? What are you going to be serving with it? And these are the questions that they would ask you.
Oh my gosh.
So you'd go to Monsieur Dudy, and with all the women, and you say, I need a chicken for tonight. He'd say, and what are you going to be serving with it? And based on what you were going to serve with it, he would put herbs and spices on it that would correspond with what you're going to serve. Or you would, wait a minute, it gets
Oh,
better.
nice.
Or a pork roast, or a beef roast, whatever. So you would go in the morning and say, and he'd say, and what time? And you would say, I'll be back around 4 when I pick up the kids. Perfect. So you would go,
Oh,
and it would be done.
how cool.
And there was no extra charge.
He would cook it for you?
Yes, because he had a
What?
big rotisserie.
Oh, nice.
So he would put your meat
It's a Jersey.
Wow.
on the
What a
rotisserie.
deal.
And so you would have this perfectly cooked, perfectly seasoned, fat trimmed off of it.
That's so great because a lot of times I don't know what to make for dinner. I'm like, I just don't know what I feel like. I'm kind of sick of cooking the same thing. He
Right.
could kind of spark some imagination
Right, and he would
do
say,
the
well,
cooking
oh,
for
you're
you.
going to do,
Why can't we have something
like
like
a
that?
leg of lamb. I mean, you know how much trouble a leg
Yeah.
of lamb is? So when I did a leg of lamb, I couldn't get it from Monsieur Dudy. I would have to go into Leal, which was in the Ramparts. And so I would go to this particular lamb guy, and he would, he would say, and how many people for dinner? And, what are you going to be serving with it? Oh, you need this size or that. Come back in 2 hours. At which point, do you know Rod Cockshoot, who's also, he was a,
Yeah.
So Rod came to visit us, he's a good friend. And so he wanted a leg of lamb, so I said, okay, fine. So I went there, and I think he might have been with me, and the guy says, come back 2 hours, I'll have it ready. He trimmed every bit of muscle and fat off of it, stuffed it with fresh herbs, closed it up, took the bone out, closed it up, stuffed it with fresh herbs, and then wrapped it in a very paper thin piece of